ESPN's Malika Andrews reveals trauma she suffered as a teenager. What went on here? I'll tell you.
With millions watching and many people benefiting from this program called Indisputable, we just need 1% of the viewers to become a paid member so we can continue to bring this content to you. Now back to the show.
According to People magazine, NBA Countdown host Malika Andrews reveals she was sent to some infamous residential treatment programs for 3 years when she was a teen. Today, she still struggles with mental illness. Andrews grew up in Oakland, California. Her sister, Kendra, also an ESPN reporter. Parents, Mike, a personal trainer, and Karen, an artist. Biracial kid, Andrews stuck out like a sore thumb in her predominantly white private school where she was well-liked and a strong student. However, by the age of 12, she started lashing out. She showed signs of a disordered eating. I remember going to a lunch one time with a bunch of girlfriends and chewing up a hamburger and spitting it into a napkin. She says, one of my girlfriend's moms was there and asked me if I didn't like my food. I was so mortified that someone saw me. That was sort of the beginning of what's been now a decades-long battle with food and body image for me. By 8th grade, she was in therapy for depression, but she was failing classes, didn't seem to care. She wasn't invited back to a rigorous K through 12 school. Then in March 2009, after a violent argument with a friend, Andrews admitted to her mom she'd considered self-harm. I was crying and said, I know I need help. A therapist told her parents to take Malika to the ER, where she was placed in a psychiatric hold. We were confused and scared, says Karen, age 63. I don't think any of us understood the journey our family was embarking on. It was hellacious. Again, People magazine. It would be more than 3 years before Malika moved back home. It was like having our familial heart ripped from our body, says Karen. Felt wrong living a life without our core four. It was a life of disequilibrium. When insurance ran out, she was moved to an eating disorder program, but they told me they weren't equipped to deal with all the stuff I had going on. Malika's parents were on the brink of a breakdown, says Karen. Malika was not safe at home. What were we to do? An educational consultant suggested Wingate Wilderness, a therapy program in Utah that has since gone out of business. Wilderness was a hard sell, says Karen, but Mike is a mountain man. Whether on a dirt bike, mountain bike, or skis, he finds inner peace in the backcountry. We were afraid, but wanted our daughter back. Wingate was a leap of faith. Because Malika's parents knew how emotional taking her away would be for everyone, the consultant recommended they hire transporters to bring her to Wingate. The pair accompanied her on a flight to Las Vegas and then a 4-hour drive into the Kanab Desert. Spent 11 weeks in the desert with other troubled teens, hiking up to 12 miles per day with a 50-pound pack, building fire, shelter. They give you 1 roll of toilet paper and like 10 tampons, she says. If she wasn't able to build a fire, she didn't eat hot food. When she went to the bathroom, she had to count to prove she wasn't making a run for it. At night, her shoes were taken away, but throughout the ordeal, she'd find sharp rocks and continue to cut. And when it was over, her problems hadn't gone away. Instead of returning home, she was moved into an all-girls residential treatment center in Utah, where she lived for nearly 2 years under strict supervision. If you did positive things, you earn positive points. If you do bad things, you earn negative points. If you leave your sock out in the morning, room checks, you get 2,000 negative points. There was a family teacher who infamously would get down on her hands and knees to check after you mop or sweep. And if she found more than 6 spots of dust, then you earned 2,000 negatives, not doing your chore well enough. She could lose privileges like calling home if her negative points were too high. And when she could call her parents, her calls were monitored and she was forbidden from saying she wanted to go home. And that very controlling environment, purging, started to really pop up again for me. Cutting was something that would come up, Andrews says, and I ran away once, but I didn't get far. The teachers ran right after me. Andrews says she was never abused in treatment, but the tactics left a mark. For years, she wouldn't wear the color orange because in one institution, when you got in trouble, you wear an orange shirt. So people knew not to talk to you, says Andrews. I was a lost kid, but I wasn't a bad kid. Little me didn't deserve that. I did deserve help. Of her parents' decision, she says, I have the best parents in the world. They did all they could to help me. There's no bigger support system. One rare source of happiness in those years was the time she was able to spend with horses. At the final residential treatment school in Utah, where she lived for more than a year, she was granted off campus privileges to take riding lessons. She met a horse named Dante. I started working with him and I fell in love. Suddenly, I had something to pour joy into, says Andrews, who later brought Dante home to California, where she rode him until college, when she gave him to two close friends. A few years ago, Andrews's fiance gifted her with riding lessons. I believed I didn't have time or space in my life for it anymore, she says, but he helped me prioritize riding again. Horses have been my bright spot. After she finally returned home, August 2012, she had missed many of the normal rites of passage for teens. You know how much life happens in 4 years between 14 and 18? I felt like the world had moved on without me, she says. Andrews found her passion studying journalism at the University of Portland and becoming editor of the school paper. Writing and sharing other people's stories is something I found a lot of purpose in when I went to college, she says. However, before she graduated in 2017, she relapsed with her eating disorder. She lost 40 pounds after purging multiple times a day and ended up with an irregular EKG. I want you to understand that thousands of children were sent to these infamous programs, including Paris Hilton. She's talked about it. She's testified about it. Listen.
When I was 16 years old, I was ripped from my bed in the middle of the night and transported across state lines to the first of 4 youth residential treatment facilities. These programs promised healing, growth, and support, but instead did not allow me to speak, move freely, or even look out a window for 2 years. I was force-fed medications and sexually abused by the staff. I was violently restrained and dragged down hallways, stripped naked, and thrown into solitary confinement. My parents were completely deceived, lied to, and manipulated by this for-profit industry about the inhumane treatment I was experiencing. So, can you only imagine the experience for youth who are placed by the state and don't have people regularly checking in on them? I attended facilities with foster and adopted youth, and I heard their testimony that they feel like they were forgotten, being shipped from facility to facility their whole childhoods. Today, residential facilities are continuing to warehouse over 50,000 foster youth and unknown number of adopted youth in lockdown facilities. Innocent kids who have not committed crimes, kids whose parents didn't have resources to support them, kids whose parents passed away, kids who have already experienced trauma. This $23 billion a year industry sees this population as dollar signs and operates without meaningful oversight.
So it happened to a rich socialite with a famous last name too. Happened to Paris Hilton too. Malika Andrews, countless others. She called it a for-profit, rich industry. Insurance. So this is what unsuspecting parents, and I believe Malika Andrews, she knows her parents. She has a relationship with them. Paris Hilton too. They had no idea this was going on. What should be done here? I commend both for telling their story. I had no idea these places existed. Other parents need perhaps this warning too.
Yeah, I think we just need to spread the message far and wide about what really happens at these institutions. I think they prey upon parents because obviously every parent wants the best for their kid, and they promise them these like miracle results. And I think everybody needs to understand there's no such thing as miracles. Not when it comes to raising a child. If a child is having problems, these are things that need to be worked through. It's not going to be fixed up by some freaking boot camp for however many years you want to send them. Like that's not how real life works. And so I think the message gets out that these places don't actually work and they're stealing your money essentially and abusing your children and sending them back worse than they found them. Then, less people will give these people money and eventually, hopefully they'll go out of business.
I think they need to. And it's sad and it's tragic and it has caused at least these two public women that we know about enormous trauma. that they are still experiencing today. Kudos to them for figuring out how to right the ship and navigate their mental health after this. But I'd like for more of these stories to be told. People magazine's a tabloid, tell sensational stories sometimes, exclusives about the housewives. This is, I think, a service. I really do.